What's up, Riders? My name is Achilles, and today we're going to talk about Kamen Rider Revice. Now, I know you've come to expect from me videos like right after the first episodes come out, and you're probably like, Hawk, why is this video 6 episodes late? I have an answer for you. I hated Revice. Not completely, but let me break it down. Revice is the first Kamen Rider season that I went into with pretty negative connotations against it. The first thing being right off the jump when they announced the cast list and Kamen Rider Vice's actor Subaru Kimura. I did a whole video on that controversy, so I will link it in the cards, but long story short, kinda racist. My second source of trepidation was head writer Hanta Kinoshita, and this being their first foray into Tokusatsu. And normally I wouldn't be so cautious. Bring in the new blood, bring in the new ideas, but this was Kamen Rider's 50th anniversary, and this needed to hit like nothing else before. And the third and most damning thing that killed my hype was Kamen Rider Revice's crossover with Kamen Rider Saber. I know I'm not the only one that thought that way, but this episode made these characters, Vice in particular, unbearable. It was fart jokes, it was juvenile, it was a fever dream, and the less we talk about it, the better. So imagine my surprise when I watched the first episode of Revice over at twitch.tv/Achilles with the community, and I was absolutely blown away. I wanted to give the series like 6 episodes to gestate a little more and show its hand before I came out here and told you what I thought of it. And let me warn you real quick, we're going into full spoilers for the first 6 episodes. So let's start with our 2 main characters, Iki and Vice, Kamen Rider Revi and Kamen Rider Vice. In the 6 episodes we've had so far, they've gone from reluctant pairing to showing a little bit of teamwork. In fact, episode 6 had them at the top of their game, injecting themselves into a trial and catching a crooked lawyer and judge. But it wasn't all roses and dinos. They were very much hesitant to work together at the start. In fact, the only reason that Iki used the Revice driver in the first place was to save his mom from being eaten by Vice. And this dynamic continued in the following episodes, with the audience never really being let in with what Vice's true intentions are. And this makes Iki really hesitant to even become Revice. At the end of the first episode, we see him give the driver back to George and then refuse to Henshin in the second episode. In fact, it isn't until fairly recently when we start to see them really work together even in battle. If I did have to nitpick on this relationship though, I do wish that while untransformed and Vice was in his head, Iki would stop like swinging at him and falling over and making himself a fool in front of everyone. But the fact that he introduced Vice to his family in this last episode makes me hope that that's a thing of the past. Speaking of Iki's family, let's jump into the Igarashis and let's start with little sister Sakura, shall we? Sakura has all the makings to be a fantastic Kamen Rider heroine. She already knows how to fight, she throws herself in front of danger at any chance, she just needs a driver. Toei, please, as soon as possible, give her a driver. Can you tell just a little bit how much I want that to happen in the future? Mom and Pop Igarashi, pretty straightforward. Dad wants to be a YouTube star. How relatable. And mom got injured in the first episode and is still in the hospital. Wait, she had a scratch. She should not be in the hospital for this long. Although story-wise, you can see that she's the one that made the bathhouse run, so it's really interesting to see the rest of the family kind of figure out their way around it. Lastly, the most interesting of the Igarashis, Daiji and his newly introduced demon, Kagero. Daiji just had this big flip where, as far as we can tell, the demon inside of him has taken over his human body and he's become Kamen Rider Evil. After we saw Daiji flat out refuse to become Revice, I predicted on stream that this is what was holding him back. Funny, I think the brother's gonna be evil. I think the brother's gonna be our evil rider because his demon's gonna take over and he's gonna be afraid of the demon. That's just my thoughts. And wouldn't you know it, episode 6 has set us up for a collision course of brothers, which I am super invested in because I don't think I've ever seen that in Kamen Rider before. I'm also interested to see what allowed Kagero to take over Daiji. As we've seen in the last couple episodes, Daiji gets very shaky when he's put under pressure. If we're talking about pressure, we have to talk about the biggest powder keg in this show, making moves the whole time, my boy, George. George has been the hand setting things in motion this entire time. He sort of reminds me of Evil from Kamen Rider Build. It's been pretty much confirmed that there would be no drivers if not for George, and as far as my knowledge goes, there's no one inherently good that's ever created a Kamen Rider driver. George is being set up to be a huge player this season, and if it's not to be the big bad, then I'm really curious for what. Speaking of bads, let's talk about the Deadmans, because I absolutely love the villains of this season. Being a Latino myself and growing up in the southwestern states States of America, it is really cool to see things I grew up around in a Kamen Rider. Everything from the clothing choices to the catchphrase of "Gracias, Deadmans" is really cool to me, and I'm still someone that gets super surprised every time I see a white person or a black person or a Latino in a Tokusatsu series. It's made me far more invested into these villains than I probably should be. In fact, the only real thing I know right now is that Aguilera is really in love with this big stone thing who is supposed to be like the king of all demons. As far as gimmicks go, I actually really love the Vice stamps. I think they're a great size, I think they're a great gimmick. I just don't know how in love I am with the forms. The matching a past rider with an animal doesn't always work for me. The base Revi suit though, I'm gonna level with y'all. This is probably one of the most beautiful suits I've ever seen in Kamen Rider. Everything just works for me from head to toe. The Vice version of each of the suits, I could care less about, but they are there. I accept that they are there. We can move on from that. Revi is beautiful. So 6 episodes in, we've got 3 riders now, with another debuting in episode 7, and I could not be more excited for a show that I thought I was gonna put down relatively fast. I thought Vice was gonna annoy the hell out of me, and he's actually really funny. I'm digging the chemistry that him and Iki keep building every single episode. I'm ready to see what the first power-up is, because I think when that happens that remix forms will go away. Fingers crossed so we stop having to get CG, but at the end of the day, the CG hasn't even been that bad this series. I guess the lesson here is don't judge a stamp by its ink, because I'm genuinely excited for Revice and where it goes. I just wanted to give you guys my perspective on the first 6 episodes before we jump back into your regularly scheduled YouTube programming here. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.